Hello, good evening. I am the friend who keeps telling you stories, Mr. Dread. A dark cloud rolled in from the distant mountains, like ink stirred by some force, quickly splashing on the sky. The sky at 8 o'clock in the morning was as dark as the afterglow before dusk, making people breathless. I leaned my head against the passenger window. The bumpy mountain road made my stomach churn. I couldn't help but complain. Is this the shortcut you mentioned? You don't want to take the good highway, but choose this damn place. Do you think this is a place people can come to? Before I finished speaking, an unknown bird swooped down from the sky and hit the windshield with a smack sound, leaving a mark. Fortunately, there was glass between us, otherwise I would have been scared to death. Okay, it's my fault. I'm unlucky enough to win the first prize. Jiming smiled gloatingly and looked smug while steering the wheel. I was so angry that I wanted to grab him by the collar and spank him from the back seat. But he was the driver after all. If something happened, I couldn't take the responsibility, so I had to grit my teeth and bear it. Ruodong in the back row sat quietly. She was a gentle and reserved girl, and even in the face of the desolate conditions, she did not complain at all. It was this calmness that made me secretly fall in love with her. In fact, I had been planning to confess my feelings to her during this trip, but her attitude was always hot and cold, making it hard to figure out her thoughts. She was like a silent snow mountain, so cold that it made people's hearts beat fast. The car continued to bump forward. As expected, heavy rain poured down, and dense rain curtains instantly covered the surroundings. The distant mountains and nearby trees were obscured by rain and fog, and the road ahead was blurred. We ran around on the muddy mountain road like trapped animals. There is no cell phone signal in this place, and the navigation is completely useless. Let's wait until the rain stops, Jiming suggested. I nodded in agreement. Driving at night in a mountain forest where you can't see the road clearly, it's easy to get into trouble. If the situation gets worse, we might as well just stay in the car for the night. But the weather was not good, and the rain was getting heavier. Just as Jiming was bypassing a puddle of water, he lost control and the rear wheel suddenly slipped. The whole car rushed out of the road like an out-of-control beast and crashed into the fault between the grass and the downhill. At that moment, the world was spinning, and I felt dizzy and my eyes went black. Lin Chuan, wake up. Who is calling me? I struggled to open my eyes in a daze, and the sound of rain seemed to be far away in the horizon. In my blurred vision, Ruodong was leaning over and looking at me anxiously, with tears in the corners of her eyes. Her voice was still soft and clear like a mountain spring, but mixed with a trace of trembling that was difficult to conceal. Is this hell? Don't be silly. This should still be the human world. She shook her head, but her tone was not confident. We had a car accident. I managed to sit up, still feeling a little dizzy. The surroundings were covered with weeds, and the car crashed into the bushes, with a large piece of the windshield shattered. Jiming was nowhere to be seen, and just as I was about to ask, Ruodong spoke first. He was here just now, and he said he was going to see if the car could still be started. Before he finished speaking, Jiming stumbled back from the rain, soaking wet, with water dripping from his hair and mud on his face. He slumped down in the passenger seat, panting, and couldn't help cursing. I'm so unlucky. If it weren't for that old tree, we would have rushed to the bottom of the ditch. Is the car still moving? Forget about it. The front is completely dented and the lights are almost broken. He shook his head. But I just saw a village deep in the woods over there. Why don't we take shelter over there and then try to find a way to ask for help? I didn't respond immediately. Although Jiming was a bit mean, he was always bold and careful, and would not do anything without a purpose. In this desolate mountain and wilderness with wind and rain, staying in the car was not a long-term solution. After the rain stopped, we packed our belongings and stepped on the muddy mountain road leading to the unknown. When I passed the front of the car, I found that the damage to the car was more serious than expected. The hood was twisted, the headlights were broken, and even the frame was slightly tilted. It was obvious that the impact was not light. Where the hell have we fallen into? It should be an abandoned protective road. I saw the iron railings we passed by, and I guess no one has walked here for a long time. Jiming turned around and answered. As he spoke, he stared at me in a strange way, with a complicated expression. I was frightened by his stare, so I smiled casually and said, "Don't look at me like that. It's like a comrade." He didn't respond, turned around, and continued walking ahead in silence. This abnormal behavior made me alert. Ruodong suddenly approached me and whispered, "I just saw a little blood under the car." I was startled and turned around to check. But the water and mud were mixed together and I couldn't see anything unusual. I could only comfort her. "Maybe you are too nervous and your eyes are blurry." Afterwards, the three of us walked through the dense forest. The air after the rain carried the smell of moist soil. The branches and leaves in the forest were lush and dense, and the ground underfoot was soft and slippery. But the moonlight above was unexpectedly bright, reflecting the entire mountain path clearly. The further you go, the more the terrain slopes downward. I don't know how long I walked, but finally, under a hillside, the outline of a village appeared faintly. Dozens of low houses were scattered around, with mottled gray tiles and green moss on the remaining walls, and it looked like they had been in disrepair for a long time. "There is a house." Jiming's eyes lit up, and without thinking too much, he rushed to the door of one of the houses. "Is anyone there?" He knocked on the door a few times, and surprisingly, the door creaked open. No one in the room responded, and a damp and moldy smell came to his face, making him sick. Jiming frowned, but he pushed the door open and walked in, turning back to tease, "How lucky! Although this village is shabby, at least there is a roof to keep out the rain." He sat down on the worn-out mahogany armchair in the living room, panting and complaining, "I really can't walk anymore. If I keep going on like this, I'll lose a lot of weight." I frowned at him at the door and couldn't help but say, "You look relaxed. What if there is someone here? You are trespassing. If the villagers treat you as a bandit and beat you out, I won't care. Come on. Do you think this place looks like someone lives there?" The dust could have formed a mud wall. He took out a lighter from his pocket and lit a candle that had fallen on the table. The orange candlelight instantly illuminated the dim room. The layout of the hut was simple and you could see everything at a glance. There was a stove in the front hall and a connected bedroom in the back. Old pots and bowls and withered clothes were scattered on the ground, and the tables and chairs were covered with thick dust. This place seems like no one has set foot in it for a long time. Where did the people who originally lived here go? A terrible thought popped up in my mind. Could we have accidentally entered a deserted village? I had a severe headache and wanted to find a window to get some fresh air. As I was walking towards the window, suddenly, a dark shadow rushed in from outside. Meow! It was a big cat with a shiny black body, sharp eyes, and lightning-like movements. Without any hesitation, it nimbly jumped into the house, circled around us, and then jumped up and passed over Ruodong's shoulder. "My necklace!" she screamed and covered her neck. Before I could react, I saw the black cat holding the silver necklace in its mouth and running out the door. I cursed and quickly chased after it. The alley was winding, and the slippery bluestone road reflected a faint light under the moonlight. The cat ran very fast, and I chased it closely, but I could never get away from it. After a few minutes, it suddenly turned into an alley so narrow that it could only be entered sideways, and disappeared. Shit! I stopped, gasping for breath. It was quiet all around. In front of me were rows of low, old houses, which looked like eerie graves in the night. Under the moonlight, each dark window seemed to hide a pair of prying eyes, which made people feel cold. I shuddered suddenly, turned around, and ran back the way I came. When I returned to the house, I picked up some dry firewood. The three of us sat around the stove and lit a fire to keep warm. The sound of rain outside gradually stopped, and the sound of boiling well water floated inside the house, adding a brief sense of peace. Ruodong took a sip of hot tea, and her pale face finally showed some color, but she still looked around nervously and said softly, "This place is really gloomy. I always feel like something is wrong." I patted the back of her hand and tried to comfort her. "Don't be afraid. It may just be that it has been empty for too long and there are no people. Wait until dawn and we will leave." I said it lightly, but I was totally unsure. I turned to look at Jiming, only to see him not saying a word, with his head down, fiddling with the fire, his face looking extremely heavy. This anomaly made me feel even more uneasy. I glanced at my phone and saw that it was already 3 in the morning. I made sure the doors and windows were locked, gave the only sleeping bag to the two of them, and leaned back in a worn-out armchair, forcing myself to drink some tea to stay awake. But sleepiness surged in like a tide, and my eyelids felt heavy as if they were filled with lead. The firelight flickered, and the shadows on the wall were distorted and blurred. For a moment, I seemed to hear someone whispering in my ear. "Lin Chuan." A familiar voice woke me up. Ruodong was standing in front of me, her face solemn, and she made a hush gesture. She listened attentively, her expression nervous. I also pricked up my ears and my heartbeat slowly quickened. That sound, it was intermittent, like someone whispering outside the house, or like the sound of footsteps stepping back and forth on the mud, moving around us. "Not just one," I whispered. "There are many." Jiming curled up in his sleeping bag, shaking all over. I was so angry that I pulled him up from the ground and said in a low voice, "Did you know this a long time ago? What are you hiding?" He stammered, I'll just say it. Explain." He lowered his head tremblingly and finally spoke. "At that time, when the car rushed into the woods, I saw a figure suddenly jump out from the front. That face looked a bit like you, but it was not a human. There was no blood on his face, and the whole person looked like he crawled out from the ground. His voice was getting lower and lower, and he was almost crying. "It's not that I don't want to tell you. It's because the legends about this place are too evil. There was a village nearby before, and everyone in the village died overnight. But later, some people said that they all stood up again." I felt a chill down my spine and was about to speak. Bang! Outside, the wooden door shook violently. "Lin Chuan!" Ruodong screamed. The knocks on the door became more and more rapid. The next second, a rotten hand full of maggots, reached in from the crack of the door, with black nails, curled skin and flesh, and dripping with dark liquid. "Back off!" I yelled, and rushed into the small room at the back of the house with them. While they were hesitating, I took advantage of the chaos and escaped through the window. The moment my feet touched the ground, the cold wind wrapped in rain blew in my face. I ran in the dark night, and I heard the sound of hurried, dense footsteps behind me. Those things were chased out. There was me in front, panicking and at a loss as to where to go. Behind me was a group of rotting corpses, rushing towards me like a tide, with a suffocating stench. At this moment, I finally understood. We didn't break into a deserted village, we broke into hell. Jiming fell behind, missed a step, and fell to the ground. He struggled desperately to stand up, but suddenly screamed. A rotten claw stretched out from the darkness and grasped his ankle tightly. The hand was pale and swollen, and the nails penetrated the flesh. Blood immediately flowed out, staining the mud with a creepy black and red. Jiming's face was twisted in pain, and he shouted hoarsely, "Leave me alone! Run! We can't leave you behind!" I turned around and rushed over, but he pushed me away. "Run! Otherwise, you will all die." There was a last glimmer of reason and pleading in his eyes. I was stunned, but I finally gritted my teeth and pulled Ruodong to run for my life. Behind me, I could hear Jiming's painful roar and the sound of corpses tearing flesh and blood. He was engulfed. Ruodong choked up all the way, her fingers getting colder and colder. I pulled her along the path, through the broken wall, trying my best. But she suddenly stopped. "Don't stop!" I turned around and shouted, but saw that she looked abnormal. She looked down at her arm, which was covered in purple and black marks, and the blood vessels appeared to be twisting under the skin. I was poisoned by the well water. Her voice was calm, but her eyes were unusually clear. "Lin Chuan, I know I can't hold on any longer. No, it won't happen. We can find a doctor, and he will definitely be able to save you," I said as I held her hand, but she gently broke free. "I just want to know one thing." She looked up at me, her eyes moist and bright. "Do you like me?" "I like you. I always have." My voice trembled and my eyes were hot. "That's enough." She smiled softly, a gentle smile, but with a farewell tenderness. "I am already very satisfied to hear you say it yourself." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned abruptly and ran towards the cliff in the darkness behind her. "Ruodong!" I chased after her desperately, but I only saw her leaping lightly off the cliff, like a bird escaping from suffering, and sinking into the boundless darkness without hesitation. The wind and rain poured down again, tearing the mountains and forests apart, and it seemed as if the sky and the earth were crying. I fell to my knees, tears mixed with raindrops falling one by one. At that moment, I felt that all my strength had been drained away. What was the point of leaving me alone? I wandered in the forest like a lost soul. I didn't know how long it had been before I returned to the place where we had the accident. The broken wire mesh was still open with its bloody mouth, waiting for the next intruder. There was a wooden house next to it. I pushed the door open and entered, and dust hit me in the face. The house was simply furnished, with a yellowed old report on a table. I wiped off the dust and looked down. Due to unknown contamination of the water source, a serious biological and chemical infection has occurred in this area. The military has sealed off and isolated the village. Anyone who enters without permission will be treated as infected. I was stunned, and suddenly the well water that Jiming used to make tea came to my mind. That water, we all drank it. I finally understood that even if we hadn't been caught up by those corpses, we would have died. My body started to stiffen and my fingers gradually went numb. I fell to the ground and laughed wildly. Outside the window, heavy rain was pouring down, and the sky and the earth were dark. Just as my consciousness was gradually becoming blurred, I seemed to see a car slowly approaching from the mountain road. Sitting in the passenger seat was a person who looked exactly like me. And in the driver's seat was Jiming, who had a familiar smile on his face. The cycle begins again. Well, that's the story for today. I am Mr. Dread, a friend who will accompany you into the night with stories. If you have experienced something similar, please leave your story in the comments section. We see you in the next story.